Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of VCTV, a double edition at that. I'm Kyle Ellicott, your host. We've been talking about this every single day for the past few weeks. It is Q3, quarter three, third quarter. It is the time of the year, an important time of the year for fundraising, no matter what side of the table you sit on, as an investor, as an entrepreneur, no matter what industry, region, or market you're a part of. So whether you're in a region around the world that's emerging and starting to thrive, whether you're in an industry or a technology like some of those we're going to be talking about today, clinical trials, health tech, health diagnostics, and therapeutics, doesn't matter. This is an important time for you to be paying attention. And we here on VCTV want to make sure you are prepared on all sides of that table and all conversations that you may be having. So we bring the best and the brightest from around the world to share with you their thoughts and insights on what is happening in each of these spaces and regions around the world so that you can hear the latest and the greatest and also ask questions, comments, and know who to connect with if you're in these areas as well. And with that, audience, we thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you're hearing today, make sure you do click subscribe and give us a thumbs up. Also, investors, if you'd like to be on a show like today, like our investors and panelists, do reach out and we'd love to have your thoughts and insights on a show like today. We've got plenty of topics and industries to talk about, so we'll find the right one for you. But entrepreneurs, this is not just for investors. As I mentioned, Q3 is a big, important time of the year for you and your company sprinting towards the end of the year. So we've got a virtual stage for you. Do reach out. We'd love to hear from you. And we've got a virtual stage for you to pitch us as investors on an episode like today, along with our audience in real time. And we would appreciate the opportunity to work with you. So do reach out to the LA Token team, Maria, Elena, and or myself, and we'd like to find you the right spot. And a big thank you to Elena, Maria, and to the entire LA Token team for making VCTV possible every single day, because we couldn't do it without them. And that brings us all together and brings us here to kick things off as I'm Kyle Ellicott, your host. Today's topic, again, we're going to be talking about clinical trials, health diagnostics, and therapeutics. We're going a level deeper on health tech. We're looking at what's coming and what's next. These are very important areas, all that are seeing very big advancements over the last year and have been worked on for decades. But the digitization that we've gone through in the past year and really the past 6 months have accelerated and changed these three areas for the better. And we're going to find out where technology may or may not be applied to them and where they're going to go from here. Let's go ahead and get started. So I want to welcome back a great panelists who we've had talking around this type of technology in these industries before, around biotech and medtech. I want to welcome back Joanne. It's a pleasure to have you. A little intro, a little background, please, for the audience.
Great. Thanks, Kyle. And thank you for all of those from home who are tuning in today, or potentially from work, wherever you are. So yes, my name is Joanne Hackett. I lead the healthcare practice at IZY Capital. My background is in molecular genetics, tissue engineering, and stem cell biology. I've spent the last 25 years in those industries in a variety of different guises. And really where I'm quite excited that we're at today and also where we're going is the digitization of data in a variety of different ways, whether that's coming off of a genomic sequencer, for example, or coming off of various different clinical trials platforms, that how can we actually start making smarter decisions to think about preventative health as opposed to treating sick people. So I'm delighted at the way that we're revolutionizing clinical trials and doing it virtually in some aspects, and also thinking of all the technologies and companion diagnostics that go with it. So delighted to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you as well. And preventative health is a great mention. Thank you so much for bringing that up today. We've got a lot of new advancements coming in that area, specifically leveraging data, but also some new hardware that's starting to come to light. We've talked about this on previous episodes around this topic, where we're seeing surgeries done in a telepresence type industry as well, and how data might be or will be applied to us, working towards exactly what Joanne is saying. So we're going to come back to that as well. With that, I want to welcome back another guest. Very excited to have you, Anunja. I apologize. I definitely butchered it. I'm so sorry, but I do want to turn it over to you for a little intro and a little background.
That's okay, mate. I mean, so close. You had an X-ray in the end, but so close. But pleasure coming back, mate. I mean, as I said the last time I was here, health tech is seeing a revolution. We are on a cusp of new advancement in the technology. I'm presently working on a health tech startup myself called Atutum, where we are working on personalizing healthcare for various individuals and for various patients, helping with reaching out to more patients to get a more personalized genetic testing, to get the drug that are better for them, and to basically advance clinical testing in as in general.
Wonderful. And again, welcome back to the show. My apologies. We'll get the name right at some point today. Don't worry, I will work on that for you. And Adam, welcome to the show for the first time with Elena Maria and I here on VCTV. It's a pleasure to have you. If you can, a little intro and a little background.
Yeah, sure, Kyle. Thanks for the invitation. Appreciate it. Good to be here. So Adam Dakin, I'm the managing director for Dream Ventures. We're a health tech focused fund out of Philadelphia. We actually also do cyber tech, and health tech is probably our longest standing vertical. We're one of the most active health tech investors in terms of late seed and Series A in the United States. And by health tech, our focus is pretty limited to medical devices, diagnostics, and digital health. So we really don't do therapeutics or drug discovery stuff. But what's really unique about Dream is we're not only a venture fund, but we're also what you could loosely call an accelerator. We prefer to call it a growth platform because the companies we work with are in market, they're generating revenue. It's really about helping them rapidly scale their businesses and raise institutional capital. Our model is very unique in that we don't lead rounds, we don't take board seats, we don't set terms, but we work like mad to help this very select group of companies find the lead investors so that we get the opportunity to co-invest in them. So we're getting a very small amount of equity up front. You're probably familiar with the Techstars and the Y Combinators of the world. They get a whole lot more equity as a program fee. We get a very tiny bit of equity up front because we're all about finding companies that we get the opportunity. Our model is a venture fund model. So we get hundreds of companies that apply. We work with a handful. We like to think we're finding the very best companies and making them better. My background is 25 years of early stage health tech. Started 5 companies, ran 3 of them, a couple of nice exits, a couple of epic fails mixed in there as well. But I'm an operator really, and then I moved to Dream about 3 years ago to move over to the investment side. So I still consider myself a rookie investor, much more of an operator.
Well, welcome, Adam. I think even though we all have a little bit of years on us around the investing, we're all probably still rookie investors as things continue to change so rapidly, so quickly in all industries around the world. We're always learning constantly, which is great to have you here on VCTV to share some of those insights as well. Yervan, welcome to the show for the first time as well with us here. And if you can, a little intro, a little background.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. And I'm originally from Armenia and I live in London. I've founded a fund called Grants Ventures with a couple of my other partners, and we have been investing in different companies. We've done 15 investments so far, but now are very actively looking at health tech space, and that's one of the priority areas for us. And we're looking at different verticals, digital health, drug discovery as well, genetics. It's quite broad, but very, very exciting about the sector and the changes that will happen in the next few years in there.
Wonderful. And real quick, follow up on the fund. As you guys are making investments right now, and specifically in areas relevant to today's discussion, what is kind of the typical investment that you make? Are you looking at the early stage, late stage? Where do you generally invest locally as well?
Yeah, it is early stage. It's seed stage. So with companies that already have some traction, not idea stage, but also not very late. So it's seed, Series A up to $500,000. That's kind of the ticket size.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. And to those that are listening, you've got yet another good investor to reach out to and listen to today. Gary Fowler, welcome back to the show. Been a few minutes since we've seen each other, but nonetheless, today's topic definitely has an underpinning of the technology that you focus on so dearly. Would love a little intro, a little background for those who may not know you as well.
Yeah, actually, your friend David Yang from Armenia is my partner. So if you know David Yang,
Of course, yeah, and I do know him. Yeah, that's
yeah,
good.
he's my partner in Eva, which is one of the top HR AI companies that we co-founded together. So I've done 15 companies. I focus on artificial intelligence. Like Adam, I actually have a venture studio also. My difference is we take operational roles in all the companies, and we have about 100 mentors and advisors that we actually bring in. For instance, a former COO of Walmart, the former chief security officer at Apple, those kind of things. So we really curate the companies. And we look for is AI is really the underlying component now of virtually every company. And we've developed deep expertise in artificial intelligence. I lived in Russia 14 years, so I lived in that part of the world and would travel to places like Yerevan and Tbilisi, et cetera, frequently. And we curate companies from that part of the world, in Israel too. So that's me. And I'm an investor. We are building a $100 million fund right now. I've started the $10 million seed fund, some little funds, but
wonderful. And wonderful. Thank you so much, Gary. And to everyone, welcome to the panel. Very excited to dive in. I want to kick things off quickly here with where are the current state of these three, and we'll call it also in general health tech. Even though it's a little bit deeper, but if we need one subject to use it today, where are you seeing the current state of these three areas? And again, for reference, that's clinical trials, health diagnostics, and therapeutics. Where are you seeing these areas and then some as their current state today? And Joanne, let's start with you to kick things off, if we could, please.
Sure. So I think over the past probably 4 to 6 months, just thinking about that as a time frame, the things that I've seen the most advanced and the most, I think, different is people's take on what's going to be required to actually put together a regulatory package for a clinical trial. Now that sounds super boring when I say that out loud, but what it actually underpins is how people are putting together packages of data. So it really actually does come back to the data piece. So the companies that I've seen that are quite exciting are the ones that are actually thinking about what is going to be the minimal possible product that's going to get regulatory approval in a variety of different companies that's going to actually begin at a chain of command and end with a completely different product. So it's actually looking at different ways to allow individuals to own aspects of that data, to share aspects of the data, but more importantly, for someone or something to federate that data. Because as we all know with clinical trials, it's a colossal amount of data that's going to be required to actually look at evidence-based. So it's not the large beasts of the world that are doing this. It's the smaller companies that have seen that this is a niche market to break into, but also knowing that they have to actually work a lot closer with larger CROs. So I've seen some quite interesting platforms being developed in that space. I think obviously with a lot of clinical trials, it's very difficult to be able to execute the trial itself unless you are working with a large player. But more importantly, how do you actually gather that data in a way that someone can start to derive insights? And those insights are actually then pushing it down to allow people to look at how to build a better therapeutic or companion diagnostic. So the people who are building these platforms and are actually thinking about ways to chop and change it are the ones that I'm finding quite interesting and are the ones that are actually raising a substantial amount of money.
That's a good point. And data, I think is going to be the theme of today's discussion for those that are paying attention at home. Adam, to you, what are you seeing as the current state of these three areas?
Yes, I can't comment too much on the therapeutics piece because we just don't invest in that area. But on the diagnostics and the clinicals, I'll start with the clinical trials just to segue off what Joanne said. All that data is getting harder and harder to collect because none of these patients want to enroll in trials where they have to go to an investigational site, right? So we're pretty excited about platforms that enable patients, to participate in trials, but obviously the pandemic has had some transient short-term changes and some sustainable long-term changes. Clearly the long-term change, I think, is going to be patients don't want to go to the hospital. They're very aware of the potential exposures of those environments. So any platform that makes it easier for patients to enroll in these trials, mobile-based platforms, devices even that collect data in the home, that really facilitate their participation and lower the lift for them, are platforms that we think have a lot of potential. And then in addition to that, real world evidence is obviously becoming more important. FDA has made it clear that they will accept real world evidence to expand to clear or approve devices or expand the labeling claims on those devices. So again, we've looked at a bunch of platforms that enable sort of the mining of that overwhelming amount of data that's resident somewhere deep in an EHR. But if you can get it and clean it, FDA has said they're willing to use it as part of your submission. So I think that creates lots of opportunities. And then on the diagnostic side, clearly this, the pandemic kicked down the door for telemedicine. We all know that. A lot of those changes, are not going to go away. So that has, I think, also accelerated. I talk to chief innovation officers at healthcare systems all the time. The sort of the hospital at home now is a top priority for many, many large enterprise healthcare systems. So again, any diagnostic or technology that enables clinicians to expand the sort of the scope of that care delivery into the home is going to be really interesting. So it sort of bridges between remote patient monitoring and diagnostics. But if you can get on the phone with a clinician and they can get your vital signs and real accurate data very quickly, that's very enabling. Or if it expands the scope of disease states that can be treated in the home, sort of more and more acute diseases that can be treated in the home. Again, the patients don't want to go to the hospital. It's the most expensive care setting you can go to. So those platforms that give you the clinicians this information are opportunities that we think are very exciting as well.
Yarvin, same question to you.
Yeah, so in terms of, I'll talk about diagnostics part because that's the closest to data. I think the way that we're looking at investment. So in diagnostics and combined with AI, there is huge potential in helping in early diagnosis of diseases and also helping with preventative medicine. So that's where I see huge opportunities. And there is, although there is a lot of data already, also in looking in unstructured data sources. So some of the data is quite structured, but a lot of, for example, doctor notes or patient notes, it is completely unstructured data. And if you use that information, you can get much deeper insights. And that's from conversations with one of the companies that we're looking at. It's very interesting space.
Absolutely. Gary, to you.
Yeah, so, in terms of, I'm just going to reiterate what Adam said in telemedicine. I mean, things have changed, right? It wasn't acceptable years ago. We were just talking about it, but we've dramatically moved forward quickly. And in terms of areas, I invested in a company called Zemply, and it was based on the experience with my father. They wanted to put him in a nursing home. I got him out of the nursing home, took him home. They said he was going to die in a week. My father lived 3 years, and it's because I set remote sensors and artificial intelligence up in my father's house. So I can tell you now, think about the aging population and the challenges that we have today. We don't think about it. A lot of times people don't want to talk about it, but it's something we're going to have to all take a look at if we want to enhance the quality of our life. And as a clinical psychologist, I can tell you, you live longer if you're in a familiar surroundings, and things like dementia and Alzheimer's, it lessens. So areas that we need to take a look at are things like cloud computing in healthcare. Think about digital retinopathy and how we can use computer vision. My ophthalmologist did it on me, and they were looking at, I went in for my exam. It's incredible. He showed me how the system was looking at my eye using artificial intelligence. Think about skin cancer and melanoma. Now we talk about having the ability to be better than, what did they say at Stanford, 23 or 24 top cancer doctors, and being able to diagnose it. The other thing is, what about futures and predictions, right? What's going to happen next? So we're really, as I've said many times, and I'm deeply involved in artificial intelligence, we're in the dawn of a new age. We all want to live longer. In one of our previous episodes, Kyle, I did a report paper with my MBA students on how to live to 120, and we worked with some top folks from Stanford University. I mean, this is it. I mean, now's the time, and I believe that because of the pandemic, we've just skyrocketed forward very quickly. So I'm excited about it.
Absolutely, and there's a ton more to unpack. And before we do, Anunja, apologies, to you as well in terms of the current situation. What are you seeing right now around these areas?
I mean, I agree with everything that the panelists said, but I want to look at the other side of things. Like Gary said, the pandemic has accelerated clinical trials. We are seeing growth happening at a level we have never seen before. I would say probably the pandemic has given rocket fuel to the clinical trial industry. But the other side of the things that we are seeing is in terms of healthcare diagnostics. That industry is also going through a major change in itself. To give you an example, we have not had a new antibiotic come up in many decades, and that is leading to a very serious situation where bacteria are becoming drug resistant. So it's very important to figure out which. It's very important to figure out if we are getting the right diagnostic, and it's equally important to make sure that we are giving the right drug for that diagnostic. A live case example would be one of our users in Canada who was having some issues with muscular pain, and he was constantly going through multiple doctors, but only after going through gene sequencing we were able to realize that his major issue was his body was not able to take in lactic acid properly and was not able to get rid of it. So exercising is what was causing his body more harm than not exercising. And these kinds of changes is what's going to be the next wave in healthcare. It's where we're going to see diagnostic take a leap forward by an astronomical level.
So with that, diagnostics and preventative medicine, healthcare, we've kind of come up around the idea of data. I want to go a layer deeper and how data is going to play a major role around these areas and others as well. So let's go one level deeper and below the surface, and what kind of data, how is data going to be applied in some use cases that you're seeing? But then also, one thing that we haven't talked about yet is the privacy and security around this data. It's great that we have data. It's great that a device collects data for us, but what can it be and how is it going to be applied, and where is the security and privacy around that? I mean, to Adam's point, it's great to talk to a doctor and be able to do a telepresence, but in terms of collecting my data or someone's data, how do we get it to them? How do we make sure that it's secure, and how do we make sure that it's kept within a contained environment as well? So let's go and continue that preventative and then data security conversation as well. And Anund, you're already on the spotlight here. Let's continue with you as well. What do you see around data and the advancements of its applications and security?
In terms of applications and security, I mean, we have had regulations, but let's be honest here. Technology is one sector which has pretty much been unregularized. We don't really have clear instruction on how to manage things. And that's always been a challenge. Right now, one of the major things for the new companies that are coming in would be to make sure that they take security of that data very seriously. Because while it's great to collect data, while it's great to make sure that you're using that data to improve people's life, while you're giving a better experience to your user, it's equally important to make sure that that data is it's the most personal data that a user is sharing with you. And that's a kind of bond that we have not seen with any other company in terms of Facebook or Google. Yes, they collect data, but that data is not as personal as this one. So it's equally important for the companies as well, just when they are starting, make sure that they are following the topmost protocols, make sure that they are going ahead with the best security system that's going to make sure that their users are safe at all times.
Gary.
Yeah, so in terms of the data situation, I agree, but we're also, we're in a situation where we have no choice. There's no walking back because of the telemedicine and the way that we need to communicate today. Obviously, we're going to have to go down through and make sure from a cybersecurity standpoint, from a HIPAA requirement standpoint, that we're making it. But the other side is because we've now been forced to use things like telemedicine and remote diagnostics, I think that, so it's really been placed that those cybersecurity companies need to move very, very quickly in this environment. I wrote an article a couple of years ago with the former chief security officer at Apple, Rick Orloff, and we're talking about cybersecurity in medicine. I mean, it's here, but we've got this exponential effect. We got so much data. I mean, think about the amount of data that needs to be analyzed every day. So it's a great opportunity for companies involved in cybersecurity and health tech.
Jurven.
Yeah, the data security is a real big concern, and here there are two points to consider as similar to what has happened to data on our behaviors and behavior on internet, Facebook, etc. I think people are trading convenience and some free stuff for the data, which should not really happen in the medical space. But I'm afraid it's already halfway there. So there is need for on one side the regulators to step in earlier in this space and kind of help to regulate the space, and also on the educational side to tell people about the dangers of sharing too much data, because if it's behavior data, that's one thing. It's only your personal data. If it's genetic data, for example, it's not just yourself, it's your kids, it's your parents. So you're sharing a lot more than people would think. So I think there is need for a lot more education and teaching about the dangers of sharing too much data. But there is also very interesting companies that are trying to tackle this space. One of them is a London-based company, genomes.io, and they are building a vault for genetic data. They are currently doing Indiegogo campaign. So it's I'm really helping them with this process. But yeah, I think that's an area that really needs to be looked at very seriously.
Yeah, and I think education is a great point you bring up. I mean, this is also some new behaviors for us in general, right? As consumers, we haven't really been put in the spotlight of having access to so much data and knowing what to do with it, and let alone someone else being able to know what to do with it. So you're right on education. It's also a new wave that I think we're all getting adjusted to, which will be interesting to see what other companies may arise based on that point as well, Jurven. Adam, to you as well, continuing the conversation.
Yeah, so I mean, I think at an even higher level, the security piece is for startups in this space, or even companies that are sort of rapidly emerging. Keeping that trust with the consumer is going to be the key. Because once that trust is violated, you're never getting it back. I don't think the average person is walking around that worried about their health data security. But the first time somebody hacks into that data and they find out that their sensitive genomic information, particularly, let's say, people who have rare diseases or other, genetic sequences that may make them at higher risk of diseases, then you're going to violate the public trust, and people are going to just go nuts. And so I think at a higher level from the consumer side, the fear is this data, the first time it's breached, and the first time people start thinking like, I'm not going to be able to get life insurance because somebody got my data and they found out that I had this rare genetic disease, then the entire industry, I think, is going to be set back. Internally, in terms of SOC, like just the basic HIPAA, SOC 2, that kind of compliance stuff, I think most companies do a reasonably good job of doing. But it's the higher level that sort of concerns me. And how will this genetic data in particular, how is that ultimately going to be used? You could imagine your employer, if they got that data, oh my gosh, Kyle's healthcare costs are going to be crazy. He's got some genetic cardiac disease. I certainly, I'm a self-funded employer. I don't want to pay for this guy. I'm not going to hire him. So I think that's, to me, where there's a lot of concern and sensitivity. And then I think you also sort of included in this discussion around predictive analytics. And I would say there, I'm not nearly as enthusiastic as a lot of my sort of venture colleagues are in that space. And to put it in a nutshell, it's just like a diagnostic, actually. It's not just getting information that you couldn't get before, but it's proven you can, bend the disease sort of trajectory or the cost curve once you actually have that information. And that's really the hard part, right? Because it's great. Hey, Kyle, we just discovered a year early that you're going to have diabetes a year from now. But, if you're still reaching for the Snickers bars every day, you're probably still going to get diabetes. And right. And so it's the last mile of all this stuff is changing human behavior. And that's the hardest thing to do. So until, we get a lot of companies that pitch us, are like, wow, we could tell you in advance, especially really for chronic diseases. We can tell you way in advance you're headed for a critical event and we can keep you out of that ED. Great. But you need patients to adhere or change their behavior. And that's the problem. And that's what typically doesn't happen.
Yeah, I think the key word there, last mile, right? We talk so much about last mile in terms of mobility, but it's so much, it applies to so many areas, including this as well. And I think you're spot on as well. And Joanne, to you as well on continuing the discussion.
Yeah, so a couple thoughts here. I think one of the things that excites me that I'm seeing more of with respect to clinical trials is for many years, obviously, it was a very typical portfolio of individuals who come on to clinical trials. And often people say, oh, there should be more women and whatever else. There's a reason why women are not on clinical trials. Most women have a menstrual cycle, hate to break it to you, and that just absolutely screws with everything. So how can we start to record and monitor a lot of the other aspects of a woman's health and also think about that in the context of clinical trials? And that's actually really important insights when it comes to how people metabolize drugs and various things like that. So I think we're starting to talk about things that also, before maybe made people a little bit frightened or didn't understand how it came into the continuum. But there's companies now that are developing ways to either track particular aspects of a woman's menstrual cycle or just different aspects of their health in general, and also how that actually feeds into that overall profile. And it's raising this issue a little bit more, which means that hopefully we'll be able to get more insights. At the end of the day, I think we've all alluded to the same thing, which is we want to make sure that people don't get sick, and if they do get sick, they're put on the right treatments, but also that there's a certain element of responsibility for the individual. And I think when we were talking previously about the data aspect of things, I think everybody has alluded to the fact that very personal data could be hacked or it could breach trust. I often flip it the other way around, which is to say we don't very often need that really identifiable personal information to make inferences. So how can we start thinking about the lowest common denominator to aggregate data to make insights? And I think that's quite a clever, I've seen quite a lot of advancements in that space. And then I think, going to the topic of education, why are we always so terrified about saying how, if it gets hacked, well, a bank knows way more than my GP knows about me. So we tend to always think about worst case scenarios and try to frighten people. And I'm not dismissing the fact that data breaches aren't serious, but the worst thing when alluding to life insurance, there's rules in place for that, obviously. But I think where we're also moving towards, which is quite exciting, is that employers are wanting to understand how to prevent individuals from getting ill. And if you do have an underlying health condition, it's obviously much cheaper to prevent that person from ever getting sick as opposed to treating them when they're ill. So there's this element of taking personal responsibility to record and monitor and try to be as healthy as possible, but also to push that back and say, if I do get ill and it is a genetic condition, How is someone going to help me get through that as opposed to penalize me for it because it's cheaper to make sure I don't get sick in the first place? So I think there's a lot of really interesting things that are coming up, and it's forcing the subject of where is the responsibility, how is this actually going to be enforced, and ultimately how can we collect the right amount of data to be able to make the better drugs, put people on the right trials, or more importantly, can we have virtual control arms, right? This is some of the work that Flatiron Health is doing, which is very exciting. So how can we start thinking about quite creative ways to get to the end result without actually terrifying people about data breaches or making them collect too much and things like that. So I think it's, I've only seen, really exciting things in the last 4 to 6 months, longer than that, obviously, as well. But I think we're going to see a very different way of doing trials and using companion diagnostics, which there is a need for this. So it's great.
Adam, I saw you on mute. Did you have a point to add?
Well, I think there's an important healthcare economic consideration. What Joanne said is very true, right? It's cheaper, much less expensive to keep people healthier in the long run, right? There's no, that's fairly obvious. The problem is it's not cheaper acutely. And that's where the issue is, right? Because the average person in the US is on a health plan for 3 years. So if I'm the payer here, and I know I can prevent Joanne's diabetes, but it's going to cost me some money now, but the real costs of that are downstream. 10, 20 years from now, when Joanne has heart disease and peripheral vascular disease, and she needs operations and balloon angioplasties and expensive medication, but I'm not paying for that because by that time, Joanne's on somebody else's healthcare plan, right? So that's the conundrum that that's the underlying healthcare economic problem we have in the US, is that frankly, the economic incentives don't align for preventive care. Now, if I'm on a single payer, if I'm going to be paid for by the government the rest of my life, then the government says, geez, I don't want you to go on dialysis because I'm going to foot the bill for the next 40 years. But if I'm Aetna or United, maybe not so much because I'm only going to pay for you for the next 3 years. And that's a problem that I think we're struggling, at least as a U.S. healthcare system, to figure out.
Yeah, and there's a lot. Gary, did you have a point to add on that as well? I saw you.
I mean, the thing is, we look at it, the amount of data, health data has increased almost 1,200% since 2016. I mean, and I agree with Joanne. I mean, our data is everywhere, right? And it's going to be analyzed in a lot of different ways. I'm not sure, honestly, we can prevent it. I know, you got 23andMe, you got Ancestry.com. I was on there looking at my relatives from the late 1700s. You know what I mean? They know a lot about us. So I'm not, and I hear what you're saying, Adam, but this problem that we have is happening all over, right? Doesn't matter if it's a car insurance company. It doesn't matter if it's a healthcare. This is just a matter of having a lot of data that can be analyzed. It's just the way it is. And guess what? The amount of data with our own personal cloud doubles every year. In 5 years, we'll have 10 million pieces of data in our own personal cloud. How are we going to be? We need assistance to help us. You're right. Prevent it. We need technologies that can go in and fix it. Cell-specific technology, sure. But this is all coming together at the top. It's a great opportunity for us. I think it's and it's a train moving forward that can't be stopped.
Well, with that, Gary, I want to come around to everyone for areas of opportunity as we start to hit the lightning round here and get your closing thoughts. Anything else to add around opportunities that people should be paying attention to in the industry or around these areas, Gary? And then any closing thoughts and where can everyone find you online?
Yeah, I mean, the situation for, to have chatbots that can absolutely help you with minor questions that you have, it would be really cool to have more of those out there. So smart assistants for there. We know that AR, VR, XR is going to be used in healthcare a lot more. We know that there's cell-specific ways of being able to establish medicines. We know that telemedicine is critically important today. And we know we got a massive amount of data that needs to be analyzed. So in each one of those areas, and I could go on and on, right? Each one of those areas, tremendous opportunity. I love artificial intelligence because guess what? It spans every one of them in some way, shape, or form across multiple vertical markets, and they're transportable models. So it is here to stay. Go to AI.
And where can everyone find you online to continue the discussion?
Yeah, Gary Fowler, LinkedIn, or Gary at GSDVS, GetShitDoneVentureStudios.com.
Love it. Anund, To you, closing thoughts, opportunities, and where can everyone find you online?
So, I mean, in terms of our closing thoughts, I want to add something on Gary said. The area of opportunity is going to primarily be in terms of making sure that the data that is being generated can not only be read by the doctors, by the healthcare professional, but it has to make sense for the user as well. Data is doubling every year. So when you're generating healthcare data, when you're creating a blood test report that's giving you your thyroid profile, your T3, T4, TSH, that's just an acronym with some numbers. It has to make sense with in terms of how it's working out, what's improving for the user, what's deteriorating. And that's the situation. AI system that needs to be in place, which can help user make sense of it at a macro level. You don't really have to understand deeply. So that's where we see that this is where an area of opportunity is. If you want to go ahead and create a system that can build a trust factor for the user so that they can make an educated decision in terms of their data. So that's one area of opportunity for me. You can find me on online. You can find me on LinkedIn and on Twitter at Anuj Chauhan. That's ANUUJ Chauhan CHAUHAN. Just my first name on Twitter, and you can email me on anuj@atutum.com. If you're in the healthcare sector, we're also looking to hire some talented professionals. So feel free to reach out to join us as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yarvin, to you, any closing thoughts, opportunities, and then where can everyone find you online?
Yeah, thank you. So in terms of closing thoughts, I think big area that needs to be tackled is pre-disease stage, to really diagnose people that already have a condition but they don't really know about it. So it's a space that can help both patients and also reduce the healthcare costs, and I agree with Gary. AI is here to help. So I'm really positive about the use of AI machine learning technologies in analyzing all this data. And another thing that I would like to touch upon is users or people, patients, they have a lot of information now. So if you look at like 10 years ago, you would go to a doctor and you wouldn't really know about your condition much. Now you can research about it, and you, in a lot of cases, know much more than specific doctor does, because you have just looked at your specific case and you've looked at thousands of sources. I think there may be an opportunity in helping users to talk to doctors and come to something that works specifically for them. And in terms of finding me, I'm on LinkedIn. My email is yervand@groundsventures.com. So it's easy to find.
Wonderful. Adam, to you, areas of opportunity, closing thoughts, and where can everyone find you online?
Yeah, you bet. So I think we've all touched on this exponential explosion of data, but the back end use of that data is really, is sort of the tricky part of this. So we like platforms that really, where the entrepreneurs or the founders are thinking about making somebody's workflow better and faster. We get a lot of pitches from a lot of startups like, wow, we can do this. We're like, great. Who's going to use that data on the back end? Where does it go? How is it actually presented? How does it fit into, healthcare professionals are already working 12-hour days. They're not, if it adds 5 minutes to their day, they're not going to use it. So I think there's lots of opportunities to take this explosion of data and synthesize it and distill it into meaningful, sort of actionable data that fits into caregiver provider workflows. So that's, I think, an area. We've invested in 2 companies. One's called Asperia. They take these sort of heavily manual workflows and they automate them. It's a way of communicating with patients in an automated fashion. With another company we invested in called Health Note, which gets a very accurate, precise patient history before the patient shows up in the office. So really making imagine the best resident in the world taking your history before you walked into the doctor's office and being presented to the doctor in a very clear, prioritized, precise fashion, saving them a lot of time and surfacing key information so they can have a better, more productive encounter. So those are some of the opportunities we're excited about. Dream It, to find me, adam@dreamit.com, pretty easy, LinkedIn. Dream It also does we do a lot of social media work. We do something called the Dream It Dose. If you are an entrepreneur and you are pitching investors, this is truly must-see TV, because what we've basically done is we listen to hundreds of pitches a year, and they are always filled with what we call record scratches. If you go to the Dream It Doses on our website, we probably have done 15 of these now, where we highlight specific areas: go-to-market strategy, how to talk to customers, how to pitch your market size, how to present your competition. It will be well worth your time if you're an entrepreneur and you're raising capital to go and go to our website and check out some of that content.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Adam. And then Joanne, close us out. Closing thoughts, areas of opportunity, and where can everyone find you online?
I'll make it quick. Real world data, real world evidence, virtual control trials, and digital biomarkers. Those are exciting areas. 2 companies I'm working with, Bios Health and Pexi, are in that space. They're very exciting. If you don't know them already, look them up. You can find me on LinkedIn or on Twitter, JoanneHackett00.
Wonderful. And everyone, thank you so much for your thoughts and insights today and taking your time on this Partner Monday. We do appreciate it. To your audience, thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you heard, click subscribe, give us a thumbs up. Do reach out if you'd like to be on a show like today, whether you're an investor sharing your thoughts and insights, or as an entrepreneur. Thank you, Joanne, who would like to pitch us and the live audience. Thank you, Gary, as well. Do reach out to Maria, Elena, and the LA Token team, and or myself, and we'll happily find a spot for you. Thank you, Vedran, as well. Thank you all again for tuning in today. With that, I'm Kyle Ellicott, your host. We'll be back here all week with double episodes of VCTV to share more about what's happening in technologies, industries, and regions around the world. Talk to you soon.